many different kinds of capitalism. It's a very broad concept. Fact of the matter is that the so-called communist states are capitalist. Soviet Russia, communist China, there's different variants of state capitalism. As we discuss in the book, in the West, since the Second World War, there have been two periods, quite different periods, of how the state capitalist system worked. First was first couple of decades after the Second World War, what was sometimes called regimented capitalism, basically moderately social democratic. In the United States, it's called New Deal. You're not allowed to use the word social in the United States. That's illegal. So it's called New Deal, but it's basically what's called socialist in Europe and most of the rest of the world, banned in the US. And it was a period, the highest growth period in the history of capitalism, egalitarian growth, no financial crises to speak of. Banks were banks, they just served the general public. Taxes on the corporate sector and the wealthy were very high, up to 90%. Very fast and egalitarian growth, plenty of flaws, but it's basically the way it was. By the late 70s, there was a business backlash, tried to destroy this all the way through. Finally, by the late 70s, they were able to make it. Then came along Reagan and Thatcher, and you get the whole radical, so-called libertarian, neoliberal assault. Well, those are two different kinds of capitalism. So, for example, during the first phase, the minimum wage tracked productivity. If it stopped in the late 70s, if it had continued, the minimum wage now would be about 3 times as high as it is. But it stopped. Okay, you didn't have roughly 70% of the population living from paycheck to paycheck. You didn't have the top 1/10 of 1% doubling its wealth share from 10% to 20%. These are aspects of a different kind of capitalism. So at the very least, we could move towards a moderately beneficial form of capitalism, but it's still capitalism, still based on the principle that certain people are masters who give orders and others are servants or slaves who follow the orders. That's called having a job.